I was a one-man team. My company now is a smaller unit count, and I have a team of 3. It's not been my favorite transition because it really identified a weakness in my skill set. I don't think I'm a bad manager by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm used to, oh, there's a problem, I'm gonna go fix it. This deliverable is required, well, I'm gonna go do that deliverable. I'm gonna go take care of that. I have to remind myself that, hey, you have a really, really savvy team that are rock stars, and we can do more if we put all 3 of our heads together than any one of us trying to take that goal.
You're starting as a marketing specialist and now managing a marketing team. What problem would you go and solve?
Ooh.
In this episode, I sit down with Gray Lane, Director of Marketing Operations at ECI Group, as he reflects on a decade-long journey through multifamily marketing. From growing up in Woodstock, Georgia, to becoming a trusted leader in marketing strategy, Gray shares how being an only child shaped his independence and how leaning into mentorship and self-awareness helped him grow as a manager. We talk career pivots, brand loyalty, and why hospitality has so much to teach multifamily. It's candid, insightful, and full of real-world lessons.
How do you feel like the industry has changed?
We were not in great shape, in my opinion. I don't necessarily know that their gripe is with JMG. I think it was with the industry as a whole. It's like some of these other industries that are similar to ours, similar verticals. We're further ahead in terms of digital marketing as a whole.
Why is multifamily so far behind?
I really don't even know the answer to that question. I think it's that
property managers lose hours chasing rent, while delinquency and filing costs add up to massive losses. The financial impact? Millions in unpaid rent sold to collections agencies that recover just 20 to 30%, while taking a huge cut. Now, the Kelsey you trust for leasing helps you recover more rent in-house, reducing reliance on agencies and maximizing revenue. With Collections AI, Kelsey automates rent and move-out collections, from the first missed payment to move-out, while ensuring compliance across jurisdictions. Easily train and set up Kelsey on your company's collections process, including CARES and state-regulated workflows. She doesn't just set reminders. Kelsey answers resident questions, tracks promise to pay dates, and follows up persistently to keep payments on track. Need oversight? Corporate teams can monitor collections in real time with Zuma's dashboard, while site teams use the Chrome Assistant to track payments and even respond as Kelsey when needed. Kelsey also evaluates resident risk with AI, providing instant insights to help you make smarter renewal decisions. The impact? Doubles collections velocity, reduces filings, cuts site team workload by 85%. Stop leaving rent revenue on the table. Let Zuma's Collections AI handle the heavy lifting while you focus on what matters. Get started today.
Let's do it. Great. Welcome to the show.
What's up, Shiv? How you doing, man? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I have to tell everybody listening, when I first broke into this industry 4 or 5 years ago, it was me and my co-founder, and we were super early days. I remember for some reason always trying to cold call Gray Lane and talk to him, and I'd get on a call and I'd tell him about the product. And it's crazy, when we reconnected, I was like, wow, so much has changed over the last 4 years, both in your career and my career.
I can't believe it's been 4 years.
Isn't that insane?
It's wild, but yeah, lots has changed.
A lot has changed. Yeah, we'll get into that. But cool, man. I'm happy to have you here. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you. Let's start with your background. Tell me where you grew up, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I grew up about an hour away from here in a town called Woodstock, Georgia. Not the Woodstock, New York, where the music festival was, even though that's kind of a fun joke. So I grew up in the Atlanta area my entire life. Went to high school in Marietta and went off to Auburn for a few years for school. But then I've been back in the metro Atlanta area pretty much my entire life. I live now about 10 minutes from where I grew up. So I guess you could call me a North Atlanta lifer.
10 minutes from where you grew up. Wow. That's crazy.
I liked it a lot. So, I wanted to try to move back. Couldn't quite move back to where I grew up, but got pretty dang close.
Yeah. And you said you went to college here in Atlanta.
I went to Auburn, which
Auburn,
is like 10 miles across the state line in Alabama.
Okay.
So it might as well be West Georgia.
Yeah. What is growing up in this area like? What was your childhood like?
I had a fantastic childhood, man. Grew up an only child to 2 awesome parents, up in the burbs. Had a great upbringing, played every sport imaginable. Wasn't terribly good at anything, but at least I got to take a crack at it, Grew up on a golf course, so grew up playing golf and around the game and all that kind of thing. And still have a great circle of friends that I grew up with that are all still scattered around the Atlanta area too. So I still keep up with them, but had a really blessed upbringing, and I'm really happy to have grown up here. So much so that I haven't really left, and I don't know if I have too much desire to leave, unless something else crazy happens.
Yeah. One of the things we like to talk about on the show is just like parental styles
Yeah.
and upbringing. How would you compare the way your mom raised you and her personality versus your dad?
Oh man, that's kind of tough. But I guess my mom was maybe a little bit more stern than my dad was. Boys will be boys, and me and my dad would mix it up and horseplay and do all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, my mom is pretty religious and pretty well to do in terms of manners and all that kind of stuff. I mean, she's a Southern belle, so tried to raise a Southern gentleman. So she was very big on being proper and all that kind of stuff. I went to cotillion when I was a kid and tried to learn all that. I think I could still tell you, which fork is supposed to go where on the place setting and all
Really?
that
What is
jazz.
so cotillion is? How do you describe it?
Oh man, cotillion kind of sounds dorky, but I guess it's pretty cool. And I guess it was a good thing that I got to do it. But it was like you learn how like you learn formal manners. So you learn about your place settings. You learn about how to sit. And honestly, my posture is probably not great. I should probably sit up a little bit better. But it's just basically like formality training and manners and all that kind of stuff. And I remember being at the time being like, what in the heck are they making me do, man? This is kind of weird. But in hindsight, I think it was probably a good thing. Probably puts a little bit of polish on, how to act professionally and how to act beyond your years when you're a kid and all that kind of thing. So I think it was a good thing all in all.
So what is it like growing up as an only child? I mean, it's hard to answer the question because you don't know anything else.
That's right.
But when you like, what is, because I grew up with two siblings, so I have
Okay.
an older sister, younger brother.
Middle
It
child.
feels like middle child, exactly.
My wife too.
Really?
Mhm.
It feels like you always have something going on, right? Like growing up, there was always somebody in the house, similar age, you can kind of talk to, hang out with, all that stuff. Did it feel like maybe lonely is not the right word, but like isolating in some ways, growing up as a middle only child?
What's crazy is everybody asks that question. It's like, didn't you get bored or didn't you get lonely or anything like that? I never really did. It never really bothered me for some reason. I always had friends. I had church friends. I had school friends. I had all that kind of stuff. And so I was always able to, pick up the phone and see if so-and-so wanted to come play or if wanted to go ride bikes or whatever. So it never really bothered me. In fact, I think it kind of made me good at being able to like be one with my thoughts almost and like entertain myself and not have to constantly have, somebody else to talk to or, a show or something like that. So I really enjoyed it. People always said, "Do you have any regrets?" Even my mom and dad asked me, like, are you upset that we only had you and all that kind of stuff?" I'm like, "No, of course not. I love being an only child. You get more Christmas presents that way,
Yeah,
right?"
that's true.
But the funny thing is sometimes I'll say that I'm an only child, and people will be like, "Oh, that makes sense. I can see that." And I'm like, "Well, what the heck does that mean? Do I come off some way because of that?" But no, it never really bothered me. In fact, I kind of like it. I think it made me, like I said, it made me be able to be one with my thoughts and do my own thing.
Yeah. What role did religion play in your life growing up?
Uh, it was fairly pronounced. I always grew up going to Sunday school and youth group and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say that we are like overly religious, but I think we certainly are. We're good Christians and that kind of thing, and still are, and still church going people and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. And do you feel like your view on religion has changed over time at all?
Um, Not so much. I think it was so foundational to my upbringing and all that kind of stuff that it's kind of baked into who I am, and I try to live it out every day.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about growing up in Atlanta. It sounds like did you mention you played sports?
I did. I played, like I said, I played a ton of sports, none particularly well. I grew up playing, baseball, t-ball, all that kind of
Okay.
stuff. I'm still a huge Braves fan. Go Braves, even though they're having a terrible start to the season. But then part of the reason that I went to the school that I did was because the school that I was going to didn't have a football team. And I really wanted to play football. That was like my favorite sport, still is my favorite sport. So, um, changed schools, played football, middle school, high school. Again, wasn't particularly good or anything like that, but wouldn't trade those years for $1 million. Learned a lot about being a man, how to take care of yourself, all that kind of stuff by playing football, and of course getting to play with your buddies in a sport like that where you have to lean on each other was,
Yeah.
so huge.
Was that your biggest priority growing up? And was school a big priority, or what was
School is a big priority. Being that, being the only child thing.
a lot of pressure?
Yeah, my parents didn't have anybody else to kind of push besides me, and went to a fairly competitive school, middle school and high school. So they were very big. Not my parents, and the school leadership was very big on academics come first. I guess you kind of had to abide by that mentality to a certain extent, because I wanted to make sure that I was doing well enough to play on Friday nights and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I took it seriously, maybe not as seriously as I should have, but I definitely wasn't one of those, and the heck with this, I'll figure it out later kind of things. I knew that I was at a good college prep school, so I wanted to make sure I was ready to roll for the rest.
And what did your parents do for work growing up?
So I was blessed. My mom was a stay-at-home mom when I was a kid, which was really awesome. I think that's part of the reason her and I are so close and still are. We did everything together. She taught me a ton of stuff, maybe more than any book ever could. But
What are some of those things you feel?
I mean, just going back to trying to be a Southern gentleman, man, it's all about respect. It's all about, being kind, looking out for yourself, but also looking out for others more importantly, and all that kind of thing. But definitely, I think the respect and the respect and manners, and I guess that kind of translates today to professionalism and that kind of thing was something that was really big that she imparted on me. And she was a stay-at-home mom. And then once I got to, a certain age where she didn't have to pal me around to practice everywhere in the car and all that kind of stuff, she actually became a single family real estate agent, and is absolutely killing it, and still is. So she's fantastic at it. I think that's part of the reason that I'm was a little bit real estate, inclined.
Really? Do you feel like
early
that
on.
influenced you?
I do, and I don't think that I would have. I'm sure we'll talk about it. I don't think I would have landed in this industry if she wasn't doing that kind of thing. So that's awesome. And my dad's actually the marketing guy in the family. He's a marketing grad from Auburn as well, and he cut his teeth in the sales world in telecom, and did a tremendous job. He actually remember the IVR craze of the early '90s and voice response technology and all that kind of stuff. That was his gig, and did very well at it. So he's currently retired, but actually just came out of retirement today, to start a new job actually in AI, which is kind of funny.
No way. Why was that?
Purely because he got bored. He could only play so much golf and cards and scroll memes before he's like, I want to go do what I'm good at, and that's talking to people and selling stuff.
That's
So,
amazing. How long was he retired for?
probably 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And I think he really enjoyed it. But yeah, like I said, I think he's back. Got to get back staying busy and getting back in his groove, and hopefully only works for a few more years. I want him to go enjoy himself.
Yeah. And what's your view on retirement? And that's really interesting. So he retired for 5 or 6 years and basically felt that, like, is he somebody that, like, can't sit still?
That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
100%. And like there was times, where like I think I'm pretty, up to date on what's going on Auburn football news or something like that. And my dad was beating me to all these stories and sending them all to me. And I was like, Dad, man, you really got to find something to do, man. So I think it was purely, he was sitting, like you said, can't sit still for too long. And I'm really super proud of him. So I think it'll be great to see, what he's going to come back and do. And hopefully he can still sell stuff. I'm sure he can.
So growing up, middle school and high school, what did you think you wanted to do? Like, did you have any idea where did you incline? Like, where were your proclivities? So for instance, I always leaned towards engineering, science, and math, and I knew I wanted to do something related to engineering. What was it for you?
Oh man. So I was actually not too different from you. I thought for sure that I was going to be an aerospace engineer. I grew up an Auburn fan. I keep coming back to that. Sorry for sounding like a broken record, but Auburn has an awesome engineering school and have put a ton of people in space through NASA and all that kind of stuff. And I was convinced that I was going to be an aerospace engineer, or was going to have something to do with that kind of field. Turns out I'm not super good at math. Maybe I shouldn't say I'm not super great at math, but math intimidated me a little bit. So like in high school and stuff, I kind of figured out that probably wasn't necessarily for me. And my mom, when she listens to this, is going to smack me, because she's like, you could have done it if you would have wanted to. You let it scare you away, and she's probably a little bit right. But yeah, that was probably my early proclivity. And then, through high school, I figured out that I was probably going to go more onto the business side of things and try to be like dad, even if it wasn't in, pure B2B sales. But thought I would take a swing at the marketing thing. And yeah, that's where I landed.
And why aerospace, like engineering? Like, where did that even come from?
I loved aviation and I loved planes. Like when I was a kid, I was pretty well traveled because my dad was, traveling all over, doing sales, and he would take us on trips and stuff, when he was going somewhere cool. And I remember being in DC when I was 6 or 7 years old, and my dad was at his meetings, and my mom took me to the Air and Space Museum in DC. And I remember just being like, "This is the coolest stuff ever, man! Like this is what it's all about." I loved aviation. I had all kinds of model planes when I was a kid and all that kind of stuff. And then I got super into the space craze and wanted to go to space camp and do all that kind of stuff. And then, as my Auburn fandom grew, and I was like, well, these astronauts have Auburn logos on their spacesuits and all that kind of stuff. Like, how BA would that be, to do something like that? And yeah, that's kind of where it all started. And I still love that stuff. I'll still go to the air show. I love the Blue Angels, all that kind of stuff. My grandfather was a Navy airman too, so that's
Wow.
part of it too. He was colorblind, so he couldn't be a pilot, but he was an on-flight electrician and in the Korean War and all that kind of stuff. So I guess it's a little bit ingrained in me from that level too.
Did you grow up hearing any stories?
A few stories. He unfortunately passed away when I was relatively young. I would love to get some stories now that I'm a little bit older and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I heard some really cool stuff about being, seeing air combat and, being responsible for fixing things in air, so things don't go down, is pretty freaking wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to do aerospace engineering, you decided against that and you went to do marketing. Is that correct?
That's right.
So similar to, you said your dad.
That's right. Yeah.
At Auburn.
At Auburn.
So the same step.
Same step. Where we split off is my dad, basically when the marketing department program at Auburn is, you could kind of go two routes. You could kind of go sales, and then you could kind of go the promotional, advertising side of things. My dad obviously went the sales track, and I, as much as I appreciated, personal selling and took all those classes and all that kind of stuff, I wanted to go the promotional advertising kind of route.
Why is that?
I just felt like it might be more fun. At that time I was kind of following, certain brands that I thought were doing really, really cool stuff. And, this is kind of like, I guess, this is what the early, mid 2000s or whatever. And like the Red Bull campaigns are coming up, and they're doing Travis Pastrana jumping out of the airplanes without a freaking parachute on. And, what does this have to do with Red Bull? And now, I kind of know that it's not necessarily about trying to sell energy drinks. It's about selling a lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. And then I still love sports. So I was following all these teams, and they were starting to, leverage social media and all this kind of stuff. And I just thought branding and producing content like that, I thought was always super, super sharp and fun and cool. And I say this to this day is, when you're doing that kind of work, you never get bored because there's always something else to do, or there's something new or some other new channel that you haven't capitalized on or something like that. So that's why I went that route. But so yeah, me and my dad are two marketing alums from Auburn's College of Business, with slightly different tracks.
Yeah. Have you ever read anything about the Red Bull founder?
No.
He has a pretty incredible story. I listened to a podcast about him, and like if you look at Red Bull's advertising, there's not a single mention in anywhere of the actual drink.
Right.
It's all extreme sports or something wild. And I think it's a masterclass of how to just capture attention without actually saying directly what you do or showing your product.
Completely.
It's pretty incredible.
Some of the activations too, I think they just find such clever ways to be present without, being totally in your face.
Yeah. How much do you feel like your degree has actually influenced your career?
I actually think it's influenced it a good bit. I had a great time in college and all that kind of stuff, but I really did try to take it to heart. I knew I was there for a reason, and I was paying to go out of state when I probably could have gone in state for a little bit less expensive. So I knew that it was really important. So I I took a lot of it into account, and I think I learned a good bit, especially one of the classes that I took and did some big projects in, which now is crazy. They wouldn't even have this course anymore. It was called internet marketing, and now I'm pretty sure internet marketing is just marketing, right? But I really took it to heart, and I think that it presented me with some good opportunities, a lot of good kind of career building stuff that I took advantage of during my time at Auburn, and I think it was worthwhile for sure.
And if you were to go back, 10, 15 years when you were deciding to major, would you have done aerospace engineering? Would you have stuck with marketing?
I probably would have stuck with marketing. I kind of like how things panned out. I mean, not that our job isn't stressful. Every job is stressful, but I also can't imagine the stress of making, million-pound things stay in the air and all that kind of stuff. And God forbid something goes wrong. And I'm better with numbers and math now than I was then, but that's not my 100% day to day what I have to live and breathe. Although I still do. So I feel like I'm better suited for what I'm doing now. Sorry, Mom.
Cool. Okay, so marketing in college, and then what's next after college?
All right. So after college, I graduated and I went home. Didn't have a job after school, and was kind of just doing the networking thing. Man, I've always been I'd like to say I'm pretty easy to talk to. This is way out of my comfort zone to do this kind of thing, but I think we're handling it okay. And just having a conversation. I could talk to a doorknob if I had to.
Yeah.
So I was basically just trying to be the networking guy. Fortunately, I mentioned earlier that my mom was a pretty savvy realtor, is still a very savvy realtor, and she was really a pillar of our community, man. She volunteered all the time. She would volunteer with our local utility providers like Foundation, and got to be the president of the women's task force. And she was just incredibly well networked because as far as she was concerned, that was the key to being a great real estate agent. She had to know all these people and hope that, somebody would come find you or you could get a referral or anything like that. So,
and sorry, how old were you when she went back into or started this real estate?
I was probably in high school.
You were in high school. Okay.
So she's probably close to 10 years into it.
Okay. And this was her first job?
This was, she
worked a little bit.
She worked at Georgia Power after she graduated from Auburn. And then when she had me, became a stay-at-home mom.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was it difficult for her to enter the work world after 16, 18 years of not doing anything?
I was pretty young. So as far as I was concerned, my mom could do anything. So, I mean, it may very well have been hard, but
Have you talked to her about it?
Not really, because
I know that's a challenge for a lot of mothers who take a long hiatus and then try to enter back into the work world.
I remember her being at our kitchen table studying for the exam, and I remember being like, "What the heck? You're studying for this harder than I've ever studied for any test ever." I mean, granted, I was hadn't had exams or finals of college finals or anything yet, so. But I remember thinking like, "Oh, what's going on?" And she took it super super seriously, and I guess maybe I that was the first time that I did notice, like, okay, she is doing something that's serious, and this is a pretty big move. And looking back, yeah, you're right. Getting back into the workforce after 16 years or whatever is got to be pretty daunting. But I think the field that she landed in, and she landed in that field as a result of some of her peers that were also doing it, was perfect for her because she's just like me. Everyone loves my mom. She's super easy to talk to and incredibly well networked. So I think that she kind of came in with a great recipe for success by having a great network and knowing our community super well, just from all of her involvement and all that stuff.
Yeah. And what was the driving force, do you think, for her to get back into the workforce?
I think sending me to school was probably not the most minimal financial burden. So I think that had something to do with it. And I also think she's kind of like my dad, where she didn't have to drive Gray around to sports practices and to school and all that kind of stuff. So, hey, might as well go make some money and do something that I like and get a chance to help people, which is, I think that's pretty foundational to who she is. And I like to think something that I picked up from her too.
Okay. So it sounds like, so you graduated from college, you were networking, and sounds like your mom kind of influenced you there. What happened after that?
Yeah. So I was literally riding her coattails with all of her networking events and all that kind of stuff. And I went to an event with her as her date, actually. It was a Cobb EMC Foundation dinner or whatever. And I went and did the thing and just started talking to somebody who I think I was wearing an Auburn shirt. Go figure, right? At the time. And was talking to somebody, and she, sparked up conversation about my Auburn shirt, and she had gone there and as well. And she said, well, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I'm a marketing grad. I had an internship last year, but they weren't hiring this year. So I'm looking for, really any kind of marketing gig. I had tried really hard to break into sports marketing like every other dude wants to, couldn't quite make that pan out. So I was kind of really open to anything as long as it was, kind of in my wheelhouse. And I got introduced, by the lady that I met to a lady named, Luann Acton Ross, who, multifamily crowd will know is kind of an industry legend. And she was over at JMG Realty at the time, and they didn't have, really anybody in the marketing department outside of Sherry Adams, who we knew, who was more on the training side of things. They had nobody responsible for internet marketing or social media or any of that kind of stuff. So spoke to her once she got over, because she's a big Alabama fan and I'm a big Auburn fan. So once she got over that on my resume, that little blip that she probably didn't like, she hired me on as a social media and internet marketing specialist at JMG Realty. And that's how I got into multifamily.
Wow. And so they really took a bet on you.
Yeah, 100%.
Because there was nobody in the marketing function besides Sherry who was doing training, you said. So they really took somebody who had just graduated to own that.
You're exactly right. I had a pretty cool internship on my resume. I worked for Glock, the firearms manufacturer, which is headquartered over here in Smyrna. And fortunately, the owners of JMG were big hunters and thought that was like the coolest thing ever. So that certainly helped me. But no, you're exactly right. They took a total flyer on me. I guess I interviewed well. I did wear a bow tie, and they thought that was awesome. So that's still kind of part of my brand.
Is that in your picture? I feel like. Yeah, I feel like that. I remember seeing that.
That became my thing at every JMG event. They'd be like, "Why aren't you wearing a bow tie?" That kind of thing. So that kind of became part of my thing. But yeah, they 100% took a flyer on me. I found out after the fact, actually, that because JMG was all a third-party management business, I actually found out that a client had been like, "Well, hey, who's in charge of social media for JMG?" And they all kind of looked at each other and were like, that's a deficiency that we need to address. So I was hoping to help address that efficiency, and I didn't know that at the time. But yeah, it was very much a client-driven reaction. But I'm very happy for it.
That's crazy. And so you enter JMG, you're kind of owning social media as a marketing specialist. What's going through your head now? Do you feel the pressure? Do you feel imposter syndrome that you're the one basically running this function, or at least like owning it? What's going through your head?
It's crazy, man. I didn't, for some reason, I don't know why, I didn't feel the imposter syndrome then that I do now. Like being here, sitting at this table with you, knowing who you've had on this podcast before, I feel like, what the heck does he want to talk to me about? But no, it was like, kind of like, I was in an industry that I knew almost nothing about. My whole thing was like, well, I guess they want to get occupancy. So occupancy was my entire MO, was how can I help drive occupancy? And then I found out that there's a lot of other, metrics that are maybe, as important or more important than occupancy and all that kind of stuff. But really what I did is I kind of just jumped in. And what better way to learn stuff than to learn it out of necessity or put your feet to the fire and figure it out. So I immediately jumped in, found some issues where I said, hey, I know I don't know this business well, but from a marketing standpoint, this doesn't seem like a very good idea to me. And that could literally be, basic web strategy, SEO, that kind of thing that I was, trying to help improve. So, yeah, no, I didn't, I felt a little bit of pressure, but maybe not quite the pressure that I felt now. Maybe it was a little bit of the honeymoon phase and being like, all right, Gray, you graduated, you got a job in marketing and real estate, and then by all accounts, by a great company, you've got some great mentors. You got hired by Luann Acton Ross, who is, on the Mount Rushmore of multifamily, at least in my opinion. So, you're doing well. So don't mess it up, man. But nothing crazy compared to now.
Yeah, that's funny. The Mount Rushmore multifamily. I've never heard of that phrase. Who else would you put on the Mount Rushmore multifamily?
Oh man, well, it's pretty hard. 'Cause trying to remember how many faces are on Mount Rushmore, four or five. So let's see. I definitely have Luann up there. Luann's counterpart at JMG, who was my mentor, Gene Woodworth, is also up there. And then some people you've already had on your podcast, man. I think Mike Wolber is one of the sharpest dudes in the space. I think he absolutely kills it. Dana Pate, who I think you've had on as well, is fun fact. Their office was actually 3 floors below ours at JMG, and I met her pretty early on. And I remember thinking, Dana's who I want to be when I grow up, because she was absolutely smoking it with Matrix Residential at the time, now Rangewater. And yeah, I thought she was a forward thinking, like helping take, the whole multifamily marketing is a little bit archaic. She was helping kind of buck that trend. And I was like, that's the kind of stuff I want to do, man. So those 4 are great. I'd probably put Sherry Killingsworth on there too. She's fantastic. I heard her. I don't even know if she could pick me out of a lineup, but I've heard her speak on the conference stage multiple times, and think they all do a whole lot to drive multifamily as in general forward, but especially multifamily marketing. So sorry for anybody who I left out on there. I could go on all day about people that I admire in this space, because there are hundreds.
Yeah. And you were listening to a lot of those episodes recently, probably. So
I was.
So tell me, you're starting your career. This was 2014.
2015. Yep.
2015. What do you feel like you would have done differently, and what do you feel like you got right?
Ooh,
the goal of this question is to help people that are listening, who are just starting their career, maybe in your position, to kind of self-reflect and learn a little bit.
Gotcha. What would I have done differently? I guess, so I was in a unique position at JMG where there wasn't a whole lot to compare me to. The bar was fairly low in terms of marketing capabilities. So I really leaned into, okay, well, I'm going to be, the marketing guy, and I should be the subject matter expert for all things marketing. And for all intents and purposes, I guess I kind of was. I probably had the best technical acumen, for being able to put forth, digital marketing approaches and all that kind of stuff. And that was all great. I guess I would have tried to lean in a little bit more to the foundational concepts of multifamily real estate and the real estate business and revenue generation and all that kind of stuff, versus just trying to be the marketing.
What does that mean, actually?
So like, there was times where, I would sit in these meetings and they would be talking about all kinds of stuff, and cap rates and, migration trends and, pro formas and all these kind of stuff that maybe was a little bit over my head at the time, that now, is second nature, because I've kind of bridged that gap a lot. But instead I would go out there and I'd be like, well, hey, you guys know all this stuff about property management, but, do you even know what PPC stands for, or SEO, or, hey, why are we on all these ILSs when we could probably consolidate, and, there's other ways to drive traffic and all this kind of stuff. So I guess I would try to be a little bit more well-rounded is the way that I would put it, and not lean so much into, hey, marketing is marketing, but it's different depending on what vertical or what business or what industry you're in.
Yeah.
Sports marketing is different than real estate marketing, and there's e-com and all that kind of stuff. It all has its nuances. So I guess trying to be a little bit more well-rounded of a real estate professional versus a marketing professional. Hopefully that makes sense. That's kind of a weird way to answer that question.
Yeah, it does. No, I think my interpretation of that is also, like you said, foundational concepts. So understanding the foundational concepts. To me, what I interpreted was, I think early in your career, it's super, super important to understand what the core problems of the business, or the foundational problems of the business are. So for example, if you're running a property management company, like, the one thing that you have to do is make sure your buildings are occupied. Because if they're not occupied, nothing else matters.
That's what I thought it was all about occupancy, which I guess it still kind of is, but
maybe not all, but like, you can't have a business if you have 5% occupancy.
That's right.
That's just the truth, right? It's the one thing that you need. And like, there's many other things, obviously, as we know. But I think what I've observed in my career, my short career, the people that I think really, the people that really stand out, my friend has this term called being a heat-seeking missile for pain. And what that basically means is, like, you want to be a heat-seeking missile for problems and pain. And when you're early in your career, the thing that you have is time, and you don't have leverage yet because you're new and you're building your relationships, you're building your network, but you want to just be a heat-seeking missile for problems and find problems and solve them.
Sure.
And I think it's really important too to understand what the problems of the business are. So when you said the foundational concepts, the way I thought about it was like, yeah, you should really understand, your boss, your boss's boss, your boss's boss's boss. What are the problems they're dealing with on the day-to-day, right? And how could you go and lend yourself and lend your time to go and solve those problems?
And what better way to prove your worth than being like, hey, you guys have been struggling with this for years, and I think I can help that. And yeah, this 22-year-old kid you don't know from Adam can probably assist. So yeah, I completely agree. And I think by plugging in and doing that, I think it was, I think it paid major dividends.
Yeah, totally. And I think the reality is like, obviously there are problems that are difficult for a 22-year-old to solve. But I think most problems, at least in our industry, and most problems in general, I don't think are that challenging. I think it's just a lack of focus and like obsession over the problem. I think you just have to spend time and like, maybe there's a bunch of problems that your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's boss's boss is dealing with. And if you can take one of those problems that are painful and hairy and difficult and like really try to go and solve it, I think you're a huge asset to any company, especially in your career, because then you become the person that goes and solves problems, that gets things done. And that's what you want to be.
That's the reputation that you want to precede you 100%.
Exactly. The downside of that is that the person who does that will get more work. It's paradoxical in some way. You're not rewarded with less work, you're rewarded with more work because you're now somebody that can be trusted, right, to solve problems.
Job security, right?
Job security, exactly. Yeah. On the note of job security, actually, like this is another thing that I personally, I don't know if it's hot or not, but hot take. I think it's super important in your early career to prioritize skill acquisition over dollar acquisition. So job security isn't like you're not secure because you've been paid a certain amount. You're secure because you have real quantifiable, tangible, undeniable skills, right? If you're somebody that has really good skills and you're good at what you do, you're going to have job security because it's a marketplace.
I don't think that's a hot take at all. I could not agree more. I think
the reason why I think it's a hot take is I think people will trade money to get more money over the opportunity to get more skills, right? Early in your career, you might find a job that is paying you well, and then you might find another job that is paying you 30% more. But rather than reflecting holistically on, is this in my long-term advantage? I think many people make the trade-off of the short-term advantage of like, let's get that 20%, let's get that 30% base bump. But I think really the thing that you have to, in my opinion, the thing you have to optimize for, regardless of money, if you want to win in the long term, is like, how can I deepen my skills? How can I get better and become a more valuable person for the company? Because if you're spiking high in value and you have these skills that any company would want, like you're going to get hired, right?
No, I think you're right. I think people fall into the instant gratification trap 100%, and I completely agree that especially you hit the nail on the head. I mean, when you're young in your career, that's the time when you should be trying to hone those skills, acquire those skills, and if you fail, you learn from it. Hopefully you don't. But if there's a time to fail in your career, it's hopefully earlier in it. At least in my opinion.
Exactly.
So I completely agree with that. And I'd like to think that I was able to kind of abide by that pretty well too. Don't get me wrong, I think I was fairly compensated, but I also understood that hey, I still have to pay my dues. I gotta be the guy. I gotta show that hey, I'm not just some millennials at that time, I feel like we didn't have the world's best connotation. They thought we were all maybe a little bit lazy or entitled or all anything like that. And I guess I'm on the bottom side of the millennial generation, but I am still one. I tried really hard to buck that trend, not only in how I carried myself, but also the fact that no, I am hungry. I want to learn. I lived in a mutual friend of ours, Sherry Adams, the training director's office all the time saying, hey, help me understand this business. How can my technical skills help improve the lives of our people that are out on site? What can I do to bring more traffic and all that kind of stuff? And that's kind of what she's part of the reason that got me into hey, you need to be more than just a marketing guy. You need to be the real estate marketing guy.
So what was, cause I feel like you started at, remind me of the company you started at.
JMG.
JMG, yeah. You were at JMG, and then you went to Asset Living for a little bit.
Asset Living acquired JMG in 2021, I think.
2021. So you actually stayed at the same company for a while.
Yeah, I think it was 7 years or so.
Yeah.
The company that I started out at, and
Why so long?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I absolutely adored the people that I worked with over there. I think, that's not uncommon about JMG, but I was in a really unique position to where I reported to, there was 5 managing partners, and people would say, who do you report to? And I would say I report to one of those partners, but really I reported to all of them. So I felt like I was kind of in a great spot. I had some well-tenured, great real estate minds that knew the management business, the ins and outs, that I was working with, and I was learning a ton from them. And I was kind of like we talked about earlier, I was getting some wins that were allowed me to kind of expand my responsibilities, and I felt like I had good career growth, and I felt like I was on track, but I wasn't moving too fast. I was kind of on the perfect progression of get a promotion here every couple of years or so, and I thought that I was learning a whole lot, doing great, and I really was very happy for the most part, and really had no desire to leave. Mostly because of the people. I was honestly probably loyal to them more than I was to any brand name or anything like that.
That makes sense. And over the last 10, this is gonna be your 10th year,
Yeah.
right? In the industry.
Yep. Just surpassed 10.
Just surpassed 10. That's awesome. How do you feel like the industry has changed? What's been, especially from a technology, where were we 10 years ago technologically?
Holy smokes, man. We were not in great shape, in my opinion. I came on, and I was fortunate that JMG was starting to see that. Obviously, they were starting to see it by some of their clients, making mention of it and all that kind of stuff. But I don't necessarily know that their gripe was with JMG. I think it was with the industry as a whole. It was like, some of these other industries that are similar to ours, similar verticals, self-storage, senior, even, those kind of verticals were further ahead in terms of, I don't know, I guess digital marketing as a whole.
Why is that? Because I've heard that often. Student, single family storage. Why is that? Why is multifamily so far behind, or why are they ahead?
I really don't even know the answer to that question. I think it's that there's maybe the management space maybe used to be a little bit of the good old boy network, and I think there's a lot of really conservative thinking in multifamily, or at least there was when I kind of got into it. And I know I'm only 10 years in. There's people that are going to listen to this that have been in it for 50. So this may sound stupid, but I feel like there was people where if it ain't broke, don't fix it, almost to a fault. And that there were certain pillars of the way that the multifamily space was operating in, that it was just like, well, why do I need to invest in all this money just for a website? And, oh, okay, well, I spent all this money for a website, but why do now you're telling me I need to spend more for people to find that website? Or, okay, now I have this website, but holy crap, the media that I have all sucks, that kind of thing. So I think it was more just almost lackadaisical due to conservative thinking and, the good old boy network that had prevailed for so long.
And over the last 10 years, you mentioned initially that the advice you took was to broaden a little bit. You're become more of a generalist. Was that correct? With marketing?
Yeah, that would work.
Do you feel like that trend has continued through your career, or have you had to make a decision to double down on a specific aspect of marketing?
No, I think if anything, my career has gone from, I thought I was, when I was middle of the road at JMG and Asset, I thought I was a very capable digital marketer. In my role now, I'm responsible for a lot more than just digital marketing, even though that was kind of my sweet spot and my honey hole and what I thought I was good at and what I liked the most. But, now I'm responsible for, event execution and even, print collateral. Yeah, people still do that. And signage and, kind of like the foundational classic pillars of marketing. Those are now all on my plate too. So I think being able to be well-rounded as a real estate professional, but also as a marketer and be savvy in all those areas, I think is really important. And I think, there's our firm is fairly small. I guess you could call us a boutique style firm. So I think being a generalist in that sense is necessary. But then I also, hear about, some of the big boys that do have massive marketing teams where there's much more specialized role, but at much more specialized roles, but as one, they're still, a very robust, general, well-rounded marketing enterprise.
Are there advantages to being a smaller team?
I think so. There's less variables, which is helpful. And I think we try to be very collaborative. And I think sometimes it's really easy for there to be, too many cooks in the kitchen and stuff. And if you, if you start, diversity of opinion is great, but you can totally stagnate yourself by having too many opinions and trying to accommodate too many, feelings and all that kind of stuff. So I would prefer, a smaller, more tight knit group. Granted, I'm kind of the exception. When I was at JMG for the longest time, I was a one man team, at least for what I was doing until kind of the end there, where I hired on a couple of marketing associates. Now I think we're at my company now is a smaller unit count, and I have a team of 3. But of course, we're vertically integrated owner operator, so there's a little bit more skin in the game, and I think the marketing environment in multifamily has matured enough that now, there is a little bit more bandwidth required to execute. And, it's not getting any less competitive out there, as we all know. So
what has the transition been like to go from an individual contributor to a manager?
It is, I still, it's not been my favorite transition. Because it really identified a weakness in my skill set. I don't think I'm a bad manager by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm used to, there's a problem, I'm going to go fix it, or, this has to happen, or this deliverable is required. Well, I'm going to go do that deliverable, I'm going to go take care of that. And I've struggled with delegation a little bit, but I think we're getting there. We're getting better. And I have to remind myself that, hey, you have a really, really savvy team that are rock stars, and we can do more if we put all 3 of our heads together than any one of us trying to take point, that kind of thing. So, it's been a little bit of a learning curve, maybe more of a learning curve than anything else that I've done professionally, but I think we're getting there. And if my team's listening, hopefully they agree.
Let's talk AI for a little bit.
Okay.
I want to get your take. So if you were to go start a technology company right now, being in the industry 10 years, seeing everything from starting as a marketing specialist and now managing a marketing team, like what problem would you go and solve?
Whew.
What do you feel like people are not focused on in the industry? Where do you think the problems are for technology companies to come in?
The centralization thing is massive, and I'm all about building efficiencies by, better staffing models and all that kind of stuff. But the bandwidth of what's required on site ain't going nowhere. In fact, I think if you have a really great, marketing campaign, marketing program, then there's going to be a whole lot of inbound inquiries and inbound interest and all that kind of stuff. So I think the best way to do it is probably, what I would say is, you have an industry that is ripe and is moving towards a centralized staffing model, but it's still very much a people business. So how can you help bridge that gap of knowing that we're trying to potentially reduce headcount, but remain, as effective as possible? So I think trying to bridge that gap, and AI is a great way to do that.
And when you say, you said something interesting to me, which is the jobs to be done, or the workload on site is not decreasing, it's actually increasing.
I would think so.
Because technology is bringing in more leads.
That's right. Technology is bringing in more leads. You're bringing in probably a more educated consumer, a more educated customer that, and they have all these experiences in other industries and other verticals. The on-demand economy, is pretty pervasive everywhere. If I can book a haircut appointment and, via text message in 30 seconds, why can't I do the same thing to go look at an apartment? That kind of thing. So, I think that, and to your point, marketing has gotten better. I think we're way more efficient with how we're allocating our marketing dollars and reaching people where they want to be reached, and a little bit more direct, targeted approach and all that kind of stuff. So I think lead volume is constantly increasing, which is a good thing. And then I also think that, the customer that's coming in requires more bandwidth than maybe previously.
We call it in our company the Amazon disease, where everything is expectations from consumers have just massively increased, right?
Absolutely.
Because products around us are providing this this quality of service that now that's your new baseline. So if somebody is providing lower than that, your expectations have risen. So you can buy something and get it delivered to you in a day.
That's right.
So you just want better service, right?
100%.
And I think service for the multifamily industry is also a moat or a differentiator in some ways, right?
Oh, well, I completely agree with that. And I mean, I've always been big on that, is about, customer service is the ultimate differentiator. I mean, it's really easy right now for, a prospect who's on the apartment hunt to go fire in 10, 15 leads in 10, 15 minutes, and the way that they responded to in terms of speed, in terms of, quality of response and all that kind of stuff, I think is the first and foremost. But ultimately, I mean, sometimes property management and multifamily and landlords and all that kind of stuff don't necessarily have the best connotation, and then partly that's to do with, you know, mediocre service over the years and, maybe, oh, maintenance issues or responsiveness or anything like that. I think it's up to us to, if we can deliver the experience that I know we're capable of and the experience that it's our company's mission to provide, then it should be a no-brainer. Everyone should want to live in an ECI property.
If you were to choose an asset class for multifamily to model, what would it be? Like hospitality, student housing? Like who do you think has really nailed it? And where do you think the multifamily industry should get closer to?
I love that. So part of the reason I came to ECI was because I got recruited by somebody that came from the hospitality space and was a exec at IHG and Marriott, and in my head I was like, you know what, that's where we need to go. The brand loyalty in hospitality, I think, is incredible, and I think that they really are good at creating these experiences that make you want to come back and also make you want to tell people about it. I mean, how many times has someone gone on vacation and been like, "Hey, if you go to St. Lucia, you've got to stay at this place that is to the nines, it is immaculate, all that kind of stuff." I want it to be like that for some of our communities. So hospitality, I think, just in terms of and hospitality, I mean, don't get me wrong, their outbound marketing and trying to acquire customers and all that kind of stuff is great, but what they also freaking nail is the customer experience and the retention and the loyalty and all that kind of stuff, which is something that I've tried to position my career towards a little bit more recently as well. Is, hey, you can be great at getting the leads and getting the traffic through the door and all that kind of stuff, but how can you make people stay? It's a lot cheaper and easier. It should be easier to keep a customer and cheaper to keep a customer than to go acquire a new one.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty basic business principle, and sometimes we forget it.
How much of that is in your control or a technology vendor's control to build tooling to help you guys versus how much of it is, hey, I'm got a new job in Arkansas and I don't really care what you offer me. I'm moving there and I'm living there.
There's always going to be those that you can't save, and that's totally.
But is it
fine.
more in our control than less? I'm curious.
I think it probably is, and I think that mentality of that's okay if this person walks, I'll just get a lease tomorrow and we'll fill it back up. I think that mentality can be a little bit dangerous because what happens if conditions deteriorate or anything like that, and it's not so easy to get that lease. So I think that it's more in our control than people would like to imagine. Let's be real, moving kind of sucks. So I know I'm one of them that if I am having a great experience, I'm way more likely to re-sign that lease and not have to deal with the expenses, the pain, the annoyingness of having to move up your life and take it somewhere else. I'd much rather stay where I put down roots. And I think by having, a rapport with your on-site staff or having a really good experience and knowing that, if there are any issues that come up, they're going to be taken care of and well attended to, I think psychologically makes one way more loyal and, way more likely to stay on. And should be our bread and butter.
Mm. So if you take the three groups that are involved in running a property, there's the corporate team, you guys, there's the on-site team, and then obviously there's your customers, which are the renters. If you take each of those groups and try to identify the most painful thing that you think each of those groups experience, what is it?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I think I'll give you an example.
Okay.
One of the things that I've heard on the corporate side is ownership, especially if you're a third party manager, ownership reporting, right? Like having to write,
Sure.
reporting and doing all that feels very mundane and manual and dry. Where technology can actually come in and really help you write these beautiful, beautiful, well thought out reports.
So maybe not so much in my purview, but I know from a corporate standpoint is that the turnover in our industry has increased, pretty dramatically over the last few years. So I know that constantly being on the prowl for new talent, and acquiring new talent and being present, in recruitment efforts and all that kind of stuff, I know is a pretty massive pain point, in multifamily firms everywhere, and trying to find, what's the right comp and all that kind of stuff. I think can be very difficult in prospect sourcing and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably the biggest I could think of from a corporate standpoint. Residents, what's the most painful thing for them? I think it's maybe the process of moving in and moving out and having to deal with all that. And knowing that, it's a pretty large purchase decision and a large transaction, but, maybe from previous experiences, there's been uncertainty and, a poor lack of service and attentiveness and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, more importantly than that is right now, I think people are more value conscious than they may have ever been. Things are, our rents are high, and, certain things aren't great for people right now financially. So I think that, if the value isn't clear, then I think that causes some anxiety and some bad feelings amongst our resident base. So I think that's part of it too, and making sure that we're delivering on that value. The third would be the site team. I think, well, this is kind of a cop out answer, but I'm just going to say it. I think it's being the juggling, balancing act between those two other parties of trying to abide by, what corporate tries to put forth, when it's really easy to make some decisions in the boardroom, that may not necessarily pan out well on site. And I think trying to serve your residents while also abiding by what corporate wants to do and vice versa, I think can be a little bit difficult. And I think that, our site teams need to not feel like they're the middleman or be put in the middle of this, even if they are. I think they need to be able to kind of just balance the requirements of both those parties, both those audiences.
What's next for you, man? You want to stay in the industry for the next decade?
I think so. I've been here for a while. I like it. I love the people. I think this industry is awesome. I love being a part of it. And I think that, we've done some really good work over the last 10 years, and we're finally starting to modernize. And I think y'all are a great example of that. I don't think there was any multifamily podcasts that I could think of, much less like multifamily, marketing centric podcasts, and up until recently. So I think that's massive. I think that we're really in a good spot, and I think that at the end of the day, I love being able to provide a home for somebody. I think that's huge for me. It goes back to what I said earlier about my mom, and at the end of the day, we're helping people, and being on the marketing, the prop tech side, we're helping people by getting to do cool stuff that looks good and is sexy and feels good and all that kind of stuff, and being able to leverage really cool new technology platforms to do it, from experience, from design, from look and feel. I see no reason to get out now. I kind of want to ride this one and see where it goes, and hopefully I can still be a part of it.
That's a great way. And my only thing that I'm upset with you about is you didn't wear a bow tie.
Looking back on it, you said smart casual, but next time, if there is a next time, bow tie 100%.
Too. Awesome, man. Well, thank you for doing this with me. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to make it work.
I really appreciate it, Shiv, and welcome to Atlanta, man.
Thank you.